Hello, and welcome to Testimony Tuesday. I'm your host, Charles Gates Jr., and this week we will be uh, talking about how God uses ordinary people to glorify His name through the gifts that He gives them. So stay tuned. So, for those of you who know me, and for those who don't, I am a published author. I wrote two books, one of poetry and a novel based on my testimony. I will be giving an example from my own life of how God used my poetry to reach other people. So, when I was 13 years old, I decided that I wanted to be a musician. But as the years went by, I started losing interest uh, in performing in front of people, and more so, just really got acquainted with the gift of writing. Uh, my gift only really was came to fruition when I was walking through one of the darkest seasons of my life. Was back in 2010 and 11, right before I found Jesus. I was going through a lot of stuff, and that year I lost my nephew Antonio. I had a miscarriage, uh, and I I was so lost and searching for the meaning of life and the reason behind why mine was the way it was. Well, during that year, I wrote poetry, and as I said, it stemmed from writing hip hop lyrics. Uh, but as I continued writing, the more I went through, the more passionate I became, and I drew from the pain that I was going through in order to form my story in poetic form. And I didn't know it at the time what would come of it. I just wanted to write down my feelings. I just wanted a way to express myself. Uh, I felt like I was isolated. I didn't know who I could reach out to. I had a couple close friends, but uh, who really has time to stop and hear someone's full burden that they bear. So poetry is the the driving factor of what helped me get through that season of my life. Now, when I was writing the poetry, I wasn't writing a book. I was just, as I said, just expressing myself. Well, through peer pressure of some close friends and cousins, and my mom, they really wanted me to publish it in a book because the poetry impacted them deeply, and they wanted me to share it with the world. I didn't want to, but they pushed me into it, and I finally heeded their advice and sought a publisher. And in 2012, I published my first book of poetry, Darkness Before the Dawn. The front quote really suits that season of my life, the way that I felt inside. It says, "When the sun sets and I'm left to face my darkest hour, even my shadow leaves my side." It would be several months later, after I published this book, that I would really truly discover that I was never alone. Uh, yeah, the moment I published the book and held it in my hands, the first time I ever recall anyone telling me they were proud of me for something, that I did something impactful for the world, and that through my poetry, I can help shape the culture uh, that I live in. Fast forward a couple months, God opened my eyes to see that my entire book of poetry was my journey to find Him. I didn't know it at the time, but it from cover to cover it expresses a poetic journey of going through the darkness in order to find the light, and how that light illuminated my darkness and gave me a hope that I didn't know yet what it was, but I knew there was something greater on the other side of my darkness. Well, hence, hence the book title, Darkness Before the Dawn. The Lord gave me that title. I don't know where it came from. It just appeared in my mind one day. Well, I feel now that He was speaking to me then. And all through my book of poetry, you can see where the Lord was speaking to me. I have a whole chapter dedicated to to God, called "Forgive Me, Father." It's actually a bunch of confessions in poetic form. I didn't know it at the time that this release, or even uh, my salvation, like a year after that God would use this book to glorify His name. Even though I wrote it before I found Him, He is today using it to glorify His name. And when at the time of its release, nobody told me of the horrific journey of marketing to market the book. I didn't know how hard it was going to be to put the book in front of the right people and on the right desks and in front of the right fans that are going to really be intrigued by it. I learned a lot through trial and error, and I do a bunch of research trying to find innovative ways on how to steward the gift that was given to me. Because the parable that the Bible gives us for forgive me, I don't remember the exact title of the parable, but it's where Jesus told a story of how a king stewarded certain amounts of talents or money to his servants, and when he came back from his mission, each one stewarded it in a different way. To one, they received 10. They had 10 talents and gained 10 more. To the second one, they had 5 talents and gave 5 more. To the one, they ran away and, well, they didn't run away. They kept the money buried, and when the king arrived, he dug it back up, and that one lost its reward because it didn't steward the gift that was given to him properly. I believe that the spiritual gifts and the talented gifts, everybody has a gift. If you don't know what yours is, it's just because you haven't discovered it yet. I believe that everybody has some type of gift that they can offer the world to glorify Christ. Mine happens to be writing, and I walk in the prophetic too, but that's more spiritual gift than. But so yeah, I believe that it is very wise to steward the talent that God has given you. I watered mine, and He has blessed it. It's been just released in 2012. It's about 8 years almost since I published. It has been 8 years since I published this book of poetry, and this year I have been on the radio 3 times. But I've never been on the radio before this year, and I was actually just got invited today to appear on a television program, Daily Spark, with Dr. Angela Chester, because she wants me to tell my story of how I found hope in the darkness while I was writing this book. and how the book really impacted its readers. There have been times when people came up to me and told me how much my book impacted them, and they were weeping, and they just told me how much it meant to them and how it impacted their lives. That's what our gifts are for, to impact the lives of those who receive them, whether uh, it is intentional, whether it's uh, unintentional, whether you know it or you don't. Your gift is impacting somebody somewhere. Just look at the worship team and how when look at the worship team and how they lead the congregation into worshiping and praising God before the sermon. That is really impacting the audience and getting their spirit ready for the next phase of the service. In the same way, God uses our gifts, like He does my poetry, He uses our gifts to soften the hearts of those who receive them and whose paths they cross. And it's used as a hoe, like a farmer's hoe, to till the soil of their hearts, so that God may plant the seeds into their spirits of salvation. It isn't always like a full-blown harvest right away. Sometimes you're just watering the seeds that are already there. But our gifts do that. And it is important to exercise our gifts. I dropped out in ninth grade. Not going to get into the reasons why there. It's a long story. But I got, a couple years ago, I think it's been 4 years now, I went and took a bunch of tests and I received my GED. When I took my language arts test, I scored the highest possible test you could score, and I got a sophomore college level in language arts on that test because I exercised the gift that God has given me. Even though I'm a ninth grade dropout, I wish I would have done better in school, but I was too rebellious back then, and didn't have good guidance to instruct me on how to stay in school and really gain an education. So I learned a lot of my education outside of school, to my regret. Hopefully that gets rid of the dry coughs. But whatever your gift is, God wants to use it to glorify His name. It reminds me of the Bible passage, I think in the book Proverbs. It says, you know someone who excels in a thing. They will not play before unknown men, but before kings. What that tells me is that if you excel, God will, if you steward properly what He's given you, and if you excel in it through exercising those muscles, you will play before known people. You will be positioned into a place like mainstream television, mainstream radio, and God will use your gifts, to spark hope and encouragement on a national scale. I'm currently witnessing that in my own life, and this isn't to brag about myself or nothing like that, but it's to glorify God, knowing that He is faithful to bring forth His promises, and His rewards for stewarding the gifts that He's given us. So, yeah, So that's about all for today's Testimony Tuesday. Uh, I was 20 years old when I wrote it. Wow, how the years fly by. But yeah, if you have a gift, water it, exercise it, get better at it. You're not going to be an expert your first try. You're going to fall down your first try, for sure. It's a fact. You're going to fall down 100 times probably, just like I have. And it might take you a decade, like it has me, in order to make progress with whatever your personal goals are. But if you water your gifts, there is a harvest that you will reap at the end of your season of preparation. See, we all had to go through a season of preparation. And it's what we do in that preparation that really cultivates the harvest we will receive in the next season. Well, now that's all. Thank you for listening to this week's Testimony Tuesday. I'm your host, Charles Gates Jr., saying God bless, be blessed, stay blessed.